Aloha, Inspired Moneymaker. Welcome back to Inspired Money. Today we're talking about a hot topic, artificial intelligence, and why the impact of AI is quick and far-reaching. College students are graduating into a job market that is already changing before they even arrive. Entry-level roles are shrinking. AI is handling tasks that used to be reserved for junior employees. And in some industries, companies are quietly redesigning workflows without hiring at all. So the question isn't, will AI affect the future of work? It already is. The question is, what happens to us and our kids when the first rung of the career ladder starts disappearing? This week, I saw a humanoid robot demonstration at the NASDAQ in Midtown Manhattan. This is not science fiction. Real systems are already deployed in hospitality. Imagine walking down to the concierge desk of your hotel that you're staying at. These machines can speak 50 languages, answer customer questions, and even tell jokes. They interact with people in real environments, not labs. And while that's happening on one side of the economy, on the other side, many companies are experimenting with AI, but they're stuck in pilot mode, never scaling beyond isolated experiments. And there have been a few breakthroughs, but many have not broken through. So today we're breaking down what's really going on beneath the surface, why organizations are stuck in innovation theater, why the workforce is splitting into a K-shaped reality, and why success is shifting from effort and output to orchestration and leverage. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by my investment firm, Runnymede Capital Management. I want to offer you a free 3-minute financial plan because planning goes a long way. You can go to inspiredmoney.fm/getplan, fill out a simple questionnaire, and it will give you some insights into where you are today versus when you're planning to retire. And you and I can schedule a call to review that at any time. So whether you're planning for a retirement in 5 years or 30 years, it all starts with a plan. Get your free 3-minute financial plan at inspiredmoney.fm/getplan. Now let's bring in our panelists. We're joined by Charlene Li, best-selling author of Disruption Mindset and Winning with AI, a leading strategist on how organizations navigate major technological shifts. We're joined by John Simon, head of people analytics and AI for the Americas at Ericsson, where he's leading large-scale AI transformation across workforce systems and decision-making. We're also joined by Elaine Pofeldt, award-winning journalist and author of The $1 Million One-Person Business. She tracks the rise of solo entrepreneurs building $1 million companies without employees. And rounding out our panel today, we have Jenny Fernandez, leadership coach and Columbia and NYU professor who works with senior executives to navigate transformation, build adaptive systems, and lead effectively in the AI-driven future of work. So glad that all of you are here. Let's jump right into segment one.
Look at the numbers. 78% of firms are launching AI pilots right now, but only 8% ever scale them. The rest are stuck in what we call pilot purgatory, that endless loop of disconnected experiments built on top of broken legacy systems. Why? Because at the highest levels, leaders fear looking foolish in front of their peers. They're performing innovation theater to show progress. But that underlying shame is what's actually stalling the real structural transformation.
Charlene, what are you seeing out there? Are you seeing companies stuck in AI pilots that are having trouble scaling? How do you tell the difference between real transformation and innovation theater?
Well, I see so many organizations doing pilot after pilot. And I believe that pilot purgatory is where value goes to die. Because when you do a pilot, no one takes it seriously because it's just a pilot. So if you go to your data group and try to get data connected to make your AI agent work, they're like, oh, when is a real experiment? When it's moving past a pilot, then we'll take this seriously. So if you're serious about this, then you'd have people across the organization at the highest levels focused on AI projects, not pilots, and actually creating value. It's very clear what the value and the outcomes are going to be from using AI.
Jenny, how do you coach leaders to move past the fear of looking foolish when scaling AI really requires accountability?
Yeah, no, thank you, Andy. That's a great question. And what I'm seeing out there again is that right now organizations are rolling AI as an IT tool. Here's Microsoft 2.0, and not realizing that this is really a big change management effort. So, for example, I was speaking in a small, intimate room of senior levels from the financial services industry, regulated. And one of the challenges that they were telling me about was that they didn't think their adoption was going fast enough. At the same time, they were measuring success with the same metrics and KPI that they would measure execution, versus really allowing for new metrics that, again, create a culture of experimentation, of collaboration that will ultimately lead to growth.
John, what's been the biggest surprise regarding AI adoption and usage in your perspective?
Well, shockingly, agents. So I look at the usage every day. And when you compare agent usage versus just chat, it's like 95% chat, 5% agents. And we have thousands of agents. And what I think it is I think humans just still want to be the drivers. They want to be in the driver's seat. They want to be in control. They want to write their own prompts. So that's definitely been my number one surprise so far.
And Elaine, what's the one AI shift that's allowed small operators to think and act like scaled enterprises?
Well, to piggyback on what John said, definitely agents. I'm getting pitches every day from people who are starting new businesses and making real money very quickly because there are no barriers to entry now. As long as they can learn the agents, they don't have to raise capital. They can just dive right in. And that is a game changer.
John, you've talked about the watermelon effect, metrics that look green but hide the red underneath. Can you elaborate on that, on what you're seeing across enterprise?
Yeah, that term or concept actually came from our CEO several years ago when he joined the company, and we all got a good chuckle out of it. I mean, it was true. He definitely called us out. But I can say that's not our problem today. Our problem today is being able to measure the impact of AI. In organizations like customer support and operations, it's very easy. But in sales and those support organizations, it's very challenging. A perfect example of that is I used AI to create a design thinking workshop. It took me 10 minutes, and I can tell you it probably saved me 5 hours. But where do I record that impact? That's a challenge.
Charlene, what are your thoughts on metrics and measuring success?
Again, I think that what John mentioned is a really interesting problem, because unless you manage what you measure, you can't capture that value. And so this is why I believe organizations that have a very clear idea of these are the things and the outcomes we want to have. So is it efficiency? Is it customer engagement? Is it actually reinventing our organization? And aligning it with your strategic outcomes. If your strategic objectives are these 6 things, then how is AI being used to accelerate, make it your outcomes better, faster, cheaper, safer? And that's what you measure. It's how AI is making a difference against the things that you already are doing that are very important to the organization.
Jenny, how do you deal with, or how do you advise leaders when it comes to strategy when they're stuck in pilot purgatory, for example? Is it a strategy issue, or is it just their underlying fear?
Great point. So I think it's really both. Part of it, as Charlene mentioned, is this idea of you get what you measure. So, for example, if the idea is to drive productivity, leaders are going to be focused on maintaining the cost down, whether it is really gravitating to what AI is automating, but also even sometimes they look at how do I keep the tokens used down? But how can you drive, AI adoption and drive innovation if you're not allowing the organization to actually use the tools effectively?
Elaine, solo businesses often skip the pilot purgatory entirely. What are they doing differently from large companies?
Well, they do test very quickly and often run multiple tests at the same time without the same consequences career-wise as people in large companies. So they're really experimenting very rapidly, getting immediate data. They're not always tracking it in numerical spreadsheets. They know what's working for them and what doesn't. In my books, The $1 Million One-Person Business and Tiny Business, Big Money, a big driver for many of them is lifestyle. So they're looking at, how does this impact my lifestyle? How does it give me time back? How does it allow me to handle more work without burning myself out? And that's how I see them using it.
John, you mentioned that employees do want control. How do you balance that desire for maintaining control versus implementing agents?
That's the big debate right now in my company. There's lots of agents being built by, for example, I'm in HR and I'm seeing employees outside of HR building HR related agents. And, something in me wants me to stop them, but right now is not the time. I'm letting people experiment. And what we have to do is just build solutions that are better than the ones that our employees are. And then that way they'll adopt ours and sunset theirs. But it's a very interesting time right now.
So keep experimenting, especially at this early stage. Let's move on to segment 2.
We have to talk about the fact that the corporate ladder is literally vanishing beneath us. Entry-level roles are being automated with 95% accuracy, which basically cuts off the traditional path for young professionals. What's emerging is a K-shaped split. Capital owners are soaring on AI productivity gains, while labor-dependent workers are hitting a wall of stagnation. This isn't just a job market shift. It's a systemic reset of how we define human value.
John, how do you prevent a K-shaped workforce from turning into a permanent divide inside organizations?
So are you talking about like people that are actively driving AI or?
Yeah, I'm talking about those actively driving AI versus those who are most impacted by AI.
Yeah, so far at my company, and I know there's a lot of news right now with a lot of layoffs, but at my company, we're not seeing that impact so far, not in Americas. We've already offshored a lot of the admin repetitive work. And so now it's really exciting to see these non-technical people are out there building agents. You don't have to have technical skills. You can use natural language. So we have HR professionals building agents that people are using every day. And that's pretty exciting.
Well, yeah, maybe you can give us a little context and tell us what things look like out there. Because I think the assumption is that AI is going to put us out of work. AI is going to do our job and then we have no job to do. But then I hear the flip side of that from, company executives saying, hey, once we introduced agents into our team, productivity is not only better, but overall success of our team has improved. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I can tell you, I'd like to write about AI and I typically tie it back to movies, my favorite movies. So like one I recently wrote about was Avatar. And if you've seen the movie, Jake Sully at the beginning, he just was sad because of his situation. He gets in this avatar and he wakes up and he's like running and it's this awakening. And I think that's what we're about to see. I think all that admin work that we don't want to do, that's really taking us away from those human things that we desire and that really matter. That's what I'm seeing. I'm freeing up my time and I'm able to do things like this. I'm able to join a podcast. I've joined more conferences and spoke at more conferences this year already than I have in the last 10. So it's really giving us a lot more of that human-human interaction that I think a lot of us desire.
Very interesting. Elaine, do you think solo businesses can realistically absorb some of this disruption that we see, when there are entry-level roles being stalled or eliminated?
Absolutely. I think we're already seeing a boom in solopreneurship, and I think it's only going to increase as people look at the writing on the wall. We all have an opportunity to be on the right or wrong side of AI, and being on the wrong side is putting your career in someone else's hands and praying that you don't get eliminated by AI. But being on the right side is using it as a tool for self-empowerment to extend what one person can do and to amplify it through creative marketing. And I see a lot of people doing this.
Charlene, what does entry level mean in a world where AI can do 95% of those tasks?
This is what IBM is doing. They're redefining what entry level means because they are absolutely committed to keeping a pipeline because they believe in bringing people in early in their career, training them in the IBM way, and they stay for 20, 30, 40 years at IBM. So they're redefining the roles of entry-level people, realizing that many of the people coming in do not have the skills to do that. So they're redefining the training and everything. But my issue with the K-shaped economy that you're talking about, you're seeing K-shaped inside of organizations. I talked to, and I love what John is talking about because we definitely have an area of where people have tremendous expertise and craft who are going to thrive with AI. But people, for example, a bank was talking about how they were automating check reading. So they used to have 90 people do it, but now the technology is so good, they only need 5. So that's 85 people. What do you do with them? So they were able to reskill and retrain half of them, but the other half didn't want to do those jobs. And so some of them will find paths as solopreneurs like Elaine, others will struggle. And I think we need to be thinking about this when looking at the workforce of the future and planning and taking that into account. So when someone says, is my job going to be taken by AI? You can't look them in the face and say, no, of course not. Of course, they're not going to believe you. So having a more thoughtful response, which is to say, AI is the future. We are using AI. We're going to provide you the tools, time, and the training, but especially the time to develop fluency. Again, that's the honest and fair way to be answering that question rather than sweeping it under the rug.
Let's move on to segment 3.
What if everything you've been told about success is backwards? We used to measure it by effort, more hours, more headcount. Not anymore. The new advantage is orchestration, using machine labor to handle the execution while you focus on creativity, strategy, and meaning. In a world where time is the ultimate asset, an unburdened mind is the only competitive edge that matters.
Jenny, do you see leaders struggling more with letting go of control or feeling unproductive in this shift to orchestration?
Yeah, definitely. People leaders, right? They see the opportunity to really, again, embrace technology as a way to be more productive, but they're also human and they're very concerned about the impact that this is going to have in their teams. So part of the work that I'm doing and the research is about reskilling the workforce in the age of AI and understanding how can we create the conditions internally to have the right use cases, to incentivize the right conditions for them to learn on the job, to learn through coaching, and to learn through training.
Charlene, what does it take psychologically for leaders to stop doing work and start orchestrating systems?
Well, I think leaders, oftentimes, especially managers, define themselves as being able to solve problems, being in the business, working in the business. And I think one of the biggest challenges is to be able to step back and instead saying, what is the change that needs to happen? And this is a moment where a tremendous amount of change is happening. And we need leaders to step back and work on the business and be thinking about what is the orchestration that needs to happen between people and AI. So what decisions and tasks will people do and which ones will AI do, or a combination of the two? And being able to orchestrate that, move things around, understand, and motivate people to go through that change when there's tremendous uncertainty, the role of leaders at that point is to create that psychological safety for people to experiment and to be able to transform the organization in a thoughtful way with all of that scaffolding that's needed.
John, you mentioned that AI is allowing you to do more things like this, being on a podcast or speaking at conferences. As I guess work is executed by AI and you kind of redefine what work becomes to you. What does that mean, leaning into the more human things of your job?
Oh, wow. Such a big question here. So, this is one thing that I've told people, like we say, hey, you need to get back in the office, for this reason and that reason. But the true reason, it is that human to human interaction. So believe it or not, I'll go to the cafeteria and I'll sit down at a table that I don't know anyone. I'll say, is it okay if I join you for lunch? I'd love to get to know you. And I'll take that opportunity to say, hey, I got this problem. You have any ideas how I could solve it? And believe it or not, the last time I did it, I took 2 of their ideas and implemented it. So it definitely puts me out of my comfort zone because I'm an introvert, but I'm being forced to be an extrovert in this new era.
You're not allowed to be an introvert just sitting at your desk with your computer anymore?
No, definitely not.
Yeah, that's a real shift. Elaine, for solo entrepreneurs, how does orchestration change the meaning of work when everything is delegated to machines?
Well, I wouldn't say everything is delegated. A lot is delegated, but what happens is a lot of the work happens in person. As John was pointing out, a lot more solopreneurs are getting back out and showing up at in-person meetings and doing networking. From what I'm seeing in my reporting, I think people want that human connection, and it will become more important. They'll also be doing more creative projects because content creation, as we're seeing, isn't always that great when it's done by AI. So you need the human element on the front end and then the AI tools to multiply and amplify what you've created as a human being.
Thank you. I think we're going to wrap up part 1 there. We talked a lot about, we covered a lot. We talked about, there's fear, there's identity, and leaders holding on to how work might have been before. And I would say that the biggest barrier to AI adoption is not necessarily the technology. It's also the psychology. And this is no time to be set in our old ways. We heard it quite clearly today, whether it's pilot purgatory, the disappearing career ladder, or the shift from effort to orchestration. This is definitely about learning new tools, but it's more than that. It's also about getting out of your comfort zone, unlearning old definitions of work. So I will just give you one simple thing you can do coming out of this part 1 is pick a task that you did this week and redesign it with AI. Not just can AI help, but should I even be doing this task at all? Be open to the process, see how AI can improve your work, speed up your work, and identify where you add value that AI cannot do. Because then you may have opportunities to do those things because you're freed up. So to get you thinking, let me ask you this question. What if the people who win in this next phase aren't the ones who work harder? They're the ones who rethink work entirely. So let me thank Elaine Pofeldt for joining us in this part 1 from her mobile office. Elaine is an award-winning journalist and author of the $1 Million One-Person Business. She's done some of the most important reporting on how solo entrepreneurs are building $1 million companies without employees. You can follow her work and writing at elainepofelt.com. Thanks so much, Elaine.
Thank you, Andy, and everyone for a wonderful discussion. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Now, as we move on to part 2, the conversation shifts from how AI is changing how we work to something even more fundamental, how it's changing what a company even is. If AI can already write code, close deals, and run operations, what happens when companies do not need employees at all? At the extremes, we're beginning to see early signals of what looks like a zero headcount company, where AI agents handle entire departments, margins can approach 90+%, and a single operator can run what used to take 100 people. But here's the tension. If machines run everything, what's left for humans to actually do? And more importantly, how do you stay visible, valuable, and relevant in a world where businesses are becoming machine-readable systems instead of human organizations? Let's bring in our panel once again. We are adding to our panel of Charlene Li, John Simon, and Jenny Fernandez. Jonathan Chambliss? I need to properly pronounce your last name and your company name, Jonathan.
It's Elevator. I thought I would be cute as a first-time founder and put a play on words. And I was reminded in the marketplace of ideas, what can't be unpacked relatively easily or simply struggles.
So Jonathan Chambliss, founder of Elevator Labs, where he builds enterprise AI and automation systems for regulated industries. He's also an advisor to the Accumulate Foundation on governance and decentralized infrastructure. Jonathan, welcome. For this program, I'm going to refer to you as Jonathan so that John Simon can be John. That way we're not confused.
Sure.
And welcome to the show. We're going to jump right into segment one.
The idea of a $10 million company with 0 staff is moving from myth to a functional reality. We're talking about replacing traditional departments with swarms of specialized AI agents, researchers, strategists, and auditors working in a machine symphony. This model allows for net margins exceeding 95% because you've eliminated the overhead of human payroll. But here's the catch. When you are the only human, you become a single point of failure that requires a whole new category of AI liability insurance.
Charlene, are we actually moving toward zero headcount companies or just redefining what a company is?
I think it's a redefinition of what a company is. So having employees on the payroll with W-2s and W-4s is quickly becoming not a go-to solution. You always thought, let's measure ourselves on how many employees we have, our revenues per employee. And I think the new model is you're flexible about who actually does work. If it's an employee, if it's a contractor, is it a partner, is it an AI? And so having that flexibility, and in particular, when everything is changing so quickly, to not have this really fixed asset of employees that you may have to shift around gives you a significant advantage. So instead of aiming to have no employees, what are the key tasks that you must have that are mission critical to your organization, that are most important, that you want to secure with employees? And I think that's a better way to think about it than trying to make it so that there are no employees at all. For a lot of organizations, you probably don't need as many people because a lot of it can be either outsourced or given to AI over time.
John Simon, you shared earlier that you've deployed many AI agents inside your organization. What does a truly AI-first organization look like at scale?
Yeah, Andy. First, I just want to talk about being an AI first organization. So employees immediately will say, why not humans first or employees first? What we mean by this is just start with AI. So if your manager asks you to put together a report, don't spend 4 hours writing the report and then use AI to enhance it. Write your prompt, get AI to create the report first, and then you go in and put in the human touch. That's what we mean by AI first. But what we're seeing now, it's super workers. I just heard it on a call today. One of the leaders said, wow, your people are developing superpowers. And it's really true. They're able to do twice as much as they could 6 months ago.
Wow, that is impressive. So what does this look like at scale when implemented?
Is that back to me, Andy?
Yeah, that's back to you.
Okay. Wow. Well, we're going to find out here very quickly because everybody's becoming super workers. So I think it means that we're going to be able to produce and do so much more. We're going to be able to do things that we weren't able to do before. So you think about leadership coaching, right? Today, we don't have enough resources except for the highest levels, level 1, level 2, maybe a little bit of level 3. Now, when we free up people's time, we're going to be able to give that leadership coaching to level 3, level 4, maybe even level 5. And that, I mean, everyone's got to be excited about that opportunity.
John Chambliss, when AI systems make structural decisions, how do you think about liability and governance?
Well, usually when there's a compliance angle at stake, it usually means there are potential resources at risk, and there's a real cost to a loss, right? So in my lane of real estate, most people can understand a framing of appraisal and inspection, right? So if you are automating the appraisal and the inspection process, you're still managing documents, right? AI hasn't changed necessarily the content that needs to be on a document, although it can. I think it's more about making sure the flow of documentation and document management between parties is improved. So rather than a black box where there is a assumption or a diffusion of responsibilities on a team, AIs help allow the humans to work together in a loop better. So I like to think the human in the loop is actually reinforced by the systems broadly. And so where a previous human-only, human-to-human relationship could have diffusion of responsibility or a breakdown in communication, the systems could actually improve that communication and potentially help steer the right outcome. So if we just broadly abstract that the technology is going to help, or orchestration is going to help improve the steering of the whole team, that's interesting. And that's something you can put a risk management framework around, so that if the systems does not perform the way it's supposed to, call it a hallucination or just a breakdown in communication between humans, both happen, right? There's still not a potential loss to all.
Oh, thank you for that insight. I don't know if John got frozen. Charlene, did you have, you wanted to add to what John Simon was saying?
Yeah, I love this idea of the super worker. In my book, we talked about the superhuman, something very similar, where somebody takes this integrated intelligence where they take the best of AI. And instead of just using AI to become more productive and do more things, we're actually carving out time to be more human. And it's this human element of being able to tap into empathy, intuition, self-reflection, judgment, and wisdom that allows you to do things that you couldn't have done before. And if you have an organization filled with superhumans, these super workers, as John was saying, that creates a significant competitive advantage compared to other people who are just looking at productivity gains. So I think there's an interesting human element that we can't forget. And I see some organizations really tapping into what is something that's uniquely human that AI can't do. We don't know what that is yet. We're still so early in the game, but I think it's something we need to be looking for as leaders and making time for.
Jenny, how do leaders, does it require a lot of introspection and taking time to think about the differences between what can we automate using AI versus the human elements of our jobs?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think this is where, whether you're a manager or a leader in an organization, we're going to have to reassess where do we need a human judgment and what is the role, the enhanced role that we need the people who remain in the company to take on. And one of the aspects that I think is going to really surface is the role of branding for leaders in an organization who remain. Because the trust that people have usually is stronger among people versus a company. And when you have now agents as employees, this is where you're going to need a little bit more branding if you're a B2B company or a small business, so that you can really build that trust with your partners, with your customers, again, with the fellow employee, so that you're, again, more empowered to be successful and really using AI to enhance your job and enhance your brand.
That's an excellent thought. Hadn't thought about that. We are definitely going to dig a little bit deeper into that in segment 3. But first, let's go to segment 2.
In the next wave of commerce, machines aren't just helping us, they're negotiating directly with other machines. We're shifting from user experience to agent experience, or AX. If your business isn't readable by AI through structured data and open APIs, you become what we call ghost software. You're invisible to the autonomous commerce systems of 2027. The companies that survive will be the ones that design for the agents, not just the users.
Jenny, how do leaders shift from storytelling for humans to structuring work for machines?
Oh gosh, that's a fantastic question. And I feel that this is one of the learning points that are going to help us grow as employees and as business owners. And I'm actually in the middle of writing an article for Fast Company about the role of storytelling. I think recently, like a week ago, we had Anthropic had a job search for a storyteller. And gosh, I forget how much money it was a salary, but it was 3 times of what we expected to see. And really the focus was that the value of that human connection is so important now that people are questioning, right? Am I talking to a human? Am I talking to a bot? They really want to ensure that they're being heard, that they still feel unique, that their needs are being addressed. And we know that while AI is amazing, it really converges. And what is unique about us as humans is that we are very creative, we connect the dots, we see connections where there were none. And this is really the role that I think we're going to have to lean into and to have our employees learn more as we go.
Charlene, what does it actually mean for a company to become machine readable in practical terms?
Well, I think about the way most organizations are built. We have these silos, these sacred silos that our organizations are built around. And our data, our processes, our people, everything live within those silos. Agents and AI detest silos because they're looking at decisions that flow across these departments and they run into this wall where they can't get access to information. And so I think these organizations that are going to be machine readable, AI readable, are organizations where decisions flow and data flows and people flows and workflows flow. But we're not just automating workflows. We're actually understanding how decisions are made and understanding who makes those, what's the knowledge and the wisdom needed to, what is AI involved, when are humans involved? So it's a rethinking of the way we are organizing organizations to allow agents to seamlessly work across them.
John Chambliss, how close are we to autonomous systems actually negotiating and executing real-world contracts?
I would answer that question from the perspective of information property enforcement. If you look at the leading frontier models, they are essentially scraping all of the publicly available data plus proprietary pipelines of data. That makes anyone trying to defend their own data and their own information property more difficult when they're using those tools outside of their licensing agreements. So I think those who understands how systems can be built to enforce information property versus leak information property is going to determine the next phase of new, call it projects or teams or systems management. We need to be able to share data in a ubiquitous way that we've never really shared before, and yet enforce privacy and security in a way that's never been matched. It doesn't make sense, but there's a optimism in engineers because they do recognize that the potential tools are there. It's the people. It's the trust. How do you manufacture trust among people? It takes time.
John Simon, when AI systems start interacting with other AI systems, where does human judgment actually sit?
Yeah, first, I just wanted to add, I think ontologists will be one of the fastest growing careers over the next few years, but I think we'll probably give it a different title that's maybe a little bit more attractive to some of our business users, right? But when it comes to this question, you have human in the loop, on the loop, and above the loop. I don't have a lot of time to go into like the details of this, but like take recruiting, for example. In the loop, the AI will give you its rankings of all your candidates, but the recruiter goes in, right, and picks out the ones. On the loop, the AI will actually decide who are the candidates moving forward and maybe give you, the recruiter, maybe two that were kind of on the fence. And then above the loop, it just automatically goes through. So the problem here, it's going to be risk, litigation. Everybody's anticipating the big Workday lawsuit right now regarding recruiting, and candidates are saying, hey, there's bias in this process. But that gives you a high level of those three.
Thank you for that. Let's move on to our last segment.
Here's the paradox. AI algorithms are already driving 35% of referral traffic to major retailers. But those same algorithms are actually hungry for human authenticity. They prioritize platforms rich in grit, real human sentiment from Reddit or YouTube transcripts. We call these brands that breathe. In an age of machine gatekeepers, your most valuable currency is being unmistakably, authentically human.
John Chambliss, in decentralized systems, how do you preserve trust and transparency when machines are interacting with machines?
That's a great question. I would say you have to follow the trail of golden truth, right? You have to follow a trail of evidence that determines how the system creates the outcome. And in the case you're mentioning, it's usually around identity. So how does one person interact in a decentralized system with another? They do so either peer-to-peer or in a multi-party computational group. But really all that means is we all have a signature, and we all are required to give our signature in an agreement. And so the outcome we're trying to manufacture by using software in a decentralized system, ultimately at the end of the day, awaits a signature from each of the parties in order to execute. And so how we connect those two parties together, the amount of intermediaries, the amount of systems in the middle, determines how clean and effective that signature process is. But at the end of the day, when there are thousands or even millions of decisions trying to be made in a very, very short amount of time, there has to be a delegation. So that management of delegation is going to be really important from the human perspective and the human judgment. Only the party members, only the team members are going to understand the tolerance of delegation to machine system without breaking the strength or the security of it. And that's the testing we're all going to use in our system over the next 5 to 10 years.
John Simon, can AI systems be designed to amplify empathy and judgment, or is that inherently human?
I think this is where a lot of the listeners might disagree with me. I think they're going to be able to show empathy and judgment, but what I'd recommend is go watch the video of 11 labs, and they show a video of a gentleman that calls in to customer support. Dad missed the flight. He's going to miss his daughter's birthday. And then the AI responds with such empathy and gives them options and recommendations. And I was just totally blown away. And I was like, I didn't think that was possible. And now I do. But I think it's going to be, do people still prefer a human when there's a distressed situation? Or are they going to be okay with that AI solution?
Jenny, you brought up the topic and the idea of brands and branding earlier. What role does leadership behavior play in keeping a brand emotionally grounded?
Yeah, no, I think at the end of the day, it comes back to trust, right? You're trusting a brand and a business with your money, with your dollars, with your investments. And as you mentioned, at the end of the day, it all goes back to, am I getting the right outcome? Yes, if the AI enhanced offering is able to provide a solution that addresses my needs, I might be a little bit more lenient and say, you know what, that is great. I can move forward with that. But when there is a crisis, I think we're going to default back to wanting a little bit more white glove service, that care. And maybe this is where organizations can provide some type of an offering or way to, again, address those crises, that friction when it appears.
Charlene, in a world of automation, what actually makes a brand feel trusted?
Well, I think I have this concept of an AI trust pyramid, and it's almost like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. At the bottom are safety, security, and privacy, and they have fairness, quality, reliability, accountability, and transparency. And so you have to build trust over time. It's not a one-time thing. You do it again and again. So that's safety and security. But I think transparency is the one that you want to aspire to. You're being very transparent about when it is an AI, how AI is making decisions, how you're interacting with it, how AI is supporting humans in making that decision. So, and communicating that both not just internally, but also externally. And especially now when fear and anxiety around AI is at an all-time high, you need to have that level of transparency about where and how you're using AI.
And I want to ask John Simon once more, what does it mean for a brand to feel human in an AI-driven system?
Yeah, I think this, Andy, is the toughest question you've asked today. So, humans are all different. I want more time to do human things, so I'm okay interacting with AI to solve most of my issues. But if there's a tragic event like a death in the family, I think that's when I want to talk to a human. But ask me in 6 months, I might change my opinion. But for now, I want to talk to a human.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, it's very interesting because my experience just in talking to the humanoid robot earlier this week, surprisingly good at just even telling a joke and having humor and having personality, which much more than what I would have expected. And I think from here, things just keep improving and getting better. So maybe we do reach a point where we're calling AI on the phone and, receiving empathy and getting counseling through difficult periods. But I agree with you, John. There will be times when I will far prefer talking to a human, but we'll see how that changes over time. Yeah. So that wraps up part 2. And if part 1 was about the psychological shift, this was really about the structural one, how businesses themselves are being redesigned around AI agents and machine-readable systems. For me, one of my favorite inspired money moments over the years was someone telling me the biggest risk in investing isn't missing out on the next big thing. It's assuming the rules won't change. And I think that idea showed up throughout the conversation today. The rules of work, company design, and even competitiveness are actively changing in real time. So here's one thing that you can take away from this segment. Pick a workflow in your business or job. Do that this week and ask yourself, if AI agents had to run this end to end, what would have to change? Don't solve it, just observe it. That question alone starts to reveal where the real leverage is. A huge thank you to John Simon, Jenny Fernandez, and Jonathan Chambliss for joining this conversation and sharing such sharp perspectives. If you want to follow their work and continue the conversation, you can find John Simon on LinkedIn. He writes some fabulous articles about AI and making comparisons to movies like Avatar. You can also find him at ericsson.com. Jenny Fernandez, you can find her at jennyfernandez.com. And John Chambliss, also on LinkedIn, Jonathan Chambliss. Really appreciate all of you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, appreciate all of you. Stick with us in part 3, the final segment of this episode. We're spending it with Charlene Li. She's going to be with us for the next 30 minutes. And I'm very excited about it because we're going to take this opportunity to go deeper into her newest book, Winning with AI, the 90-Day Blueprint for Success. It's a practical research-backed framework for moving beyond AI experimentation and actually building a clear, structured strategy aligned to your organization's purpose and values. So you cannot just adopt AI, but use it to thrive through volatility and change. Charlene and co-author Katya Walsh lay out a step-by-step approach for leaders who want to move from confusion and pilots to real execution and impact. So Charlene, how exciting is it to have this new book come out?
Oh, it's exciting. It's like birthing a child. This is my 7th book and it doesn't get old. That's for sure.
That's a lot of book/children. book versions of children. So let's jump right into it, and we'll start with segment 1.
So many executives are paralyzed right now, overwhelmed by the speed of disruption and the executive vacuum in the boardroom. Charlene Li's 90-Day Blueprint is the psychological reset designed to break that cycle. It's about moving from an accidental secretary, doing the grunt work, to an accidental manager who oversees a fleet of capabilities. It's how you turn resistance into a sovereign moat.
I want to learn more about this transformation from accidental secretary to accidental manager. For leaders still buried in their own emails and work, how do they actually let go and start orchestrating AI instead of doing all the work themselves?
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit earlier. And I think the definition of being a leader is that you solve all these problems that are coming your way. And so it feels really good to get things done, and people are coming to you for the answer. And when it comes to AI, so many leaders feel very insecure. I don't know how to use it. I'm confused by it. I can't get up to speed on it. It's constantly changing. It hallucinates, so I can't trust it. So many reasons to run away from it rather than embrace it. And yet when you let go of the need to be in control and to have all the answers, and you instead move to asking great questions, that's when your leadership accelerates. And I think that leadership can be the huge accelerant in helping an organization embrace and find value from AI. But it really does come down to being a leadership issue, not a technology issue.
How do you guide teams to use AI to serve their business strategy and not replace it?
Well, we talk about, so many organizations say we need an AI strategy, and it usually looks like a long list of use cases. Use cases are not a strategy. You have a business strategy. So think about how to use AI to achieve that strategy better, faster, cheaper, and even safer. I talked to one organization recently, and they said, we have 7 strategic objectives. Here are the first 6, and the usual suspects. And then number 7 was using AI to achieve the first 6. And I think that's a great way to think about it. AI is an enabling technology. It can be a strategic initiative to help you achieve your business objectives. And so knowing your business objectives, and this is what leaders really do well, they understand their business. So instead of trying to understand AI, understand your business objectives, your opportunities, your challenges, then figure out how to use AI to solve those problems and to realize those opportunities. So when someone comes to you with a bright, shiny object AI, here's some agentic workflow we can do. And then you can say, how does it help us achieve these top strategic objectives that we have? Draw me the line, connect the dots for me. And then let's get working on it. We're not going to do a pilot. We're going to go and implement that.
This process has to be highly customized, does it not? I think that the implementation could look very different from company A versus company B.
Well, every company is unique and different. And I can't imagine anybody using AI exactly the same way. Now, that said, there are definite decisions and workflows and tasks that are common to all organizations. So there are a lot of best practices, a lot of technology and agents and tools that you can pull off the shelf and immediately start using them. But the way your organization uses it isn't just the technology. It's not just an adoption of a tool. It's the adaptation of your organization to using that tool. And that is unique to every single organization.
How does an organization define the level of that adoption? I'm sure that you're going to have people varying across the spectrum, those who are very pro AI, those who are skeptical or overwhelmed, and then those in the middle.
Yeah, this is why I think it's a leadership issue. And right now, only 39% of Americans believe AI is going to be more beneficial than harmful. So the vast majority of people, 2x the number of people, think it's going to be more harmful than beneficial. That is a reality. But if you believe that AI is going to be the future for your organization and for society, then I think, again, this is a leadership issue that you say, look, there are a lot of things we don't know, but we do know that AI is going to be a part of this organization. So we need everyone to get up to speed and not just be AI literate, but AI fluent, that we feel comfortable, that we give people the tools and the training and the time to practice with AI, to get fluent with it so that we naturally reach where we understand what it can do, and very importantly, what it cannot do. And that fluency allows us then to start changing the way we work and to do so in a thoughtful, intentional, and strategic way.
At a practical level, what's the difference between AI literacy and the kind of integrated intelligence or fluency that you're talking about that leaders actually need to run a modern organization?
Well, I'll give you an analogy. I think many of us who did not grow up in Asian households had to learn how to use chopsticks. And when you first use them, you're like, how does this work? How does my hand even use these two sticks to pick up food? And over time, with practice, becomes second nature. And then you hit the slippery noodles and you have to adjust your grip. You still know how to use them. You just may have to adjust it a little bit. That's what AI is like. It needs to become second nature. It needs to flow so that you don't even think about, oh, of course I'm going to use AI as part of my process, the way that John Simons was talking about it before, that you think about using AI right from the very beginning. You're AI fluent, you're AI ready to be able to use it. Literate just means I know it's there. I may not be that comfortable using it. That is not enough. And I think the sooner we can get our organizations AI fluent and our people AI fluent, the sooner we can get this level set of comfort level with understanding, rather than holding it at bay because of fear and anxiety. So understanding where that fear and anxiety is coming from, addressing it, not ignoring it, knowing that it's very real and it's very, very important to understand that, address it, give the scaffolding so people can bridge their way into that fluency.
Yeah, I liked how John advocated a lot of experimentation at this early stage. And I like your analogy. I hope that using AI, implementing AI in a business is like learning how to use chopsticks. It's doable.
Yeah, the difference is a lot of organizations think if I just give people AI tools, I give them Microsoft Copilot, maybe they even have Claude or ChatGPT, I'm done. No, you have to provide the training and, very importantly, the time to experiment, to learn, to not have to deliver results yet. And the thing that I hear from people is like, oh, we don't have time. You've got to get real work done. Like, stop messing around those AI tools and get back to work. It's a message we're hearing from a lot of people. And so the place where you put people's time denotes and communicates the value that you put on things. So are you focused on getting this short-term thing done? Of course, you have to get things done. But also, what's our vision for the future? As the leaders of the organization, are we painting an idea what that future looks like, how we are going to operate in this AI future? And more importantly, what is our view about our people thriving and succeeding in this space? Because in the absence of that, fear and anxiety and paranoia fill that vacuum. And again, this is why we think this whole point of AI, it's not a technology problem, it's a leadership problem. The importance of storytelling and communicating and having a roadmap of how AI is going to create value is essential.
And what is the risk of, I guess, being resistant to to learning versus having competitors who are doing the opposite and doing things well?
Well, the risk is you're going to lose your best people. Your best people are sitting going, I want to be competitive. I'm looking out for my career and my business. Do I believe in this organization when it has no plan? It's not articulating any roadmap. We just have nothing. And we're doing things, but we're not allowing us to use these tools or getting access or having time. And it just feels so short-sighted. And the fact that you're not investing in me and my future, I'm not going to sit around waiting for that. I'm going to take control of this. I'm going to exercise the power of my 2 feet and walk out that door to a competitor who is going to support me, being able to learn and use these tools to create value.
And if we can stay with the chopstick analogy for just 1 minute longer, you know that you've succeeded when you can pick up a peanut with your chopstick. That's success in my book.
Or like eating rice off a plate instead of a bowl. You know, these are, again, when you first use AI, you get that awe and wonder. And that is the typical place where your attitude shifts from fear and anxiety, like, oh, I can use this. I can master it. I understand what it can do, and very importantly, what it can't do. I understand how to use it responsibly and ethically. And most importantly, I know how to use it in my job. And when you can have that power to create agents on top of things, that sense of agency to be able to change the way you work at an exponential level, it is mind-blowing. And so we're getting to that point now where organizations are enabling anybody in a safe and governed way to create their own agents to help them get their work done. And again, that's an investment and a pushing down of decision-making and enablement at levels that we've never seen before inside of most organizations.
How to use it in your job. Let's go to segment 2, where we address that.
Execution used to be the job. Now it's the bottleneck. The new playbook treats AI as your execution rail, handling the administrative load and the cognitive debt we've all been carrying. This introduces AX in deterministic data as the new fiduciary duties of 2026. It's not about replacing people. It's about freeing leaders to actually lead.
Charlene, as companies move faster with AI, how do leaders avoid speed turning into complete chaos?
Yeah, I love the space of governance, because oftentimes people run away from governance because it is bureaucracy is how they think about it. But I believe in, we talked about in the book, this idea of Goldilocks governance. Not too much governance, not too little. And my co-author has a saying, structure without flexibility is just bureaucracy. But flexibility without structure is chaos. So you want to figure out how to provide that scaffolding, those guardrails. I like to say Formula One drivers in these amazing fast cars can go only as fast as their safety harnesses and their brakes will allow them to, because that's what governs their ability to turn those corners. And so really good governance and guardrails doesn't slow you down, it speeds you up. And yet most organizations spend very little time governing what decisions AI and the combination of AI and humans can make. And so if you're going to have AI going across these silos inside of organizations, how are you going to make decisions? How are you going to have that integrate with the way humans make decisions, which is not always clear and fast. It's fuzzy. It can be filled with bias. So understanding how decisions are made, what is the knowledge and the data that you need to collect in order to make those decisions, and then who gets to make those decisions. Because I would argue that in some cases, AI is going to do a better job than humans. So how do you decide that? What are the markers that say you make that switch? Or when do you retain that and hold it for humans? Because there's something about the way humans make decisions that AI just can't handle at this point. So this is where, again, I think it's so important to have that thought through right from the very beginning.
And I guess at this early stage, one has to one has to have at least opportunities to learn what that balance looks like between AI and human. How often does a human need to override what the AI says? And I mean, that can also change over time, but it seems important at the early stages.
Right. Again, we talk about human in the loop, and we also have to decide when human in the loop is detrimental to the system, where AI can potentially make better decisions, and that's terrifying for some people because I don't want to let go of this, right? Because how do we decide whether, and this is again about decision management, how do we measure how good a decision it was? It wasn't just that you made a decision, but was it the right decision? And this is the analysis that needs to happen to say, let's look at and evaluate how decisions were made by humans, by AI, by a combination of the two, and being able to see how that shifts and changes over time is a big part of management now. In the past, you didn't have to worry about that. You just put somebody in charge and you hope for the best, and you make do with, and you set up systems that have fail safes to catch the decisions that aren't being made right. The same thing exists now with AI. The difference now is that you have to be able to manage this blended workforce and understand and put in place the governance to say, how do we make these decisions about making decisions over time?
So give us a little bit of a view into your book, because you have this 90-day model. And I think that you're also using AI.
I think we lost Andy. We'll be right back. Here we go. Here he comes back. Gotta love live streams.
Well, it is live, so Andy,
Yeah.
Andy will be back with us in a second. Like mostly, like I don't do this. I'm hidden away, like quite nicely. I want to say, Charlene, congratulations on the book. It's fantastic. Really love the observation about AI, and that I'm quite thick in the weeds with that myself on the side.
Yeah, I can vamp a little bit while we're waiting for Andy to come back. I do these things all the time too. I get it. The reason why we wrote the book is because so many organizations were asking, how is it that we create value with AI? How do we get started? And the reason we wrote it as a 90-day, 12-week exercise is that we want to lay out first, second, third, what are the things that you do? And you can pick and choose from it, but here's a way to think about it and how to start with strategy and go all the way down to the building blocks like governance and culture and teams and people and technology platforms. So it's sort of like a free for all. It's a complete blueprint of how to create value. And we set 90 days because it isn't so short that it feels like a rush, but it isn't so long that you take forever. And it's also the time between when you typically have a board meeting and your board says, come back with a plan, a roadmap of how we're going to use AI. And you have 90 days until your next board meeting. And here's an opportunity to build that entire map. So thinking about how you can use AI again to create value, not just come up with a whole list of use cases, but a map for the next 18 months of how you can create value with AI. And that's extremely valuable for an organization to have that.
So I've got a quick question. You've written so many books. Of the books that you've written, how pivotal do you find this AI installment? You know, like do you find that it's adding more purpose to the work that you're doing as you like kind of sunset into other things?
Right. Again, I was working on another book when AI came on the scene. I'm like, oh, this is really important. It's going to be very disruptive. And I tend to write books that explain disruptive things that are happening in our environment and then and clarify it and put it into ways so that people can understand what it is and then what to do about it. So that's sort of my focus and my superpower of all the work that I do. I do think that AI is incredibly disruptive because it challenges the way we work and more importantly, who we are, our identity of how we create value. And so it's why we see so much fear and anxiety right now, because there is so much unknown and it is constantly changing and it's happening so quickly. And that's a big distinction. It is happening, it feels like at this incredible speed that is not understandable.
I've got another add-on question. You know, with Anthropic being so disruptive as they are at this point, it kind of feels like we're almost like having like semi-heart attacks like every second day when another sector of the job market realizes that they're under threat. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that if you are not thinking about how AI is going to impact your business, your industry, your job, then you're missing, and you should be spending time thinking about this because at least think through it and identify places where it could become an opportunity or risk rather than putting your head in the sand and thinking, oh, it's not going to impact me at all. I can ignore it. I think you can do that if you're going to retire in the next year or two, but otherwise you should be thinking about this. And so I think the responsible thing to do as a leader now is to really map out where are those strategic opportunities. Oh, here's Andy! Yay!
That was interesting. I lost power and internet.
Now you're back.
So I'm not sure. You guys were freestyling.
Yeah.
Not sure where we were in the segments or where we continue from where we left off.
I ran with the whole why 90 days a little bit and talked about, you know, the time frame for that. And then Brad and I were talking a little bit about just how to think about this from a change and is it really that big of a change compared to the other books and things and transformations I've seen? And my response is it's huge. And the speed and scope at which it's happening is significant. The disruption that people are feeling right now is significant. And so as leaders, we need to come in and provide some sort of scaffolding and foundations about how to think about this change. And that's why we think, again, it's a leadership issue and not a technology issue only.
Yeah, when AI agents start interacting with other AI systems on behalf of a company, what becomes the leader's real job in that environment?
Again, it's about, again, I think it's fascinating to see what happens. The leader's job is to constrain what decisions can that AI make? And which things are we going to hold back and make sure that a human is involved in that? And so, again, AI will take it up to a point. It may even go through and consummate the transaction and make sure it happens and everything is logged. And that just could be fine because you've given it the parameters. So the leadership issue here is in the same way that you would delegate a decision to somebody, now you're delegating that decision to an agent. And you trusted the person in the past and you trust the agent now. And so the question becomes a level of trust. When do you trust the agent to do the job that a human used to do before? And in the same way that you wouldn't just give somebody, an employee, the ability to make a decision, you would show them how decisions are made, how the work is done. Then you watch them make it, and then you watch them and monitor it, and then you let them go do it, and you just check in, and you have different metrics to understand the quality of the work. Same thing with agents, exactly the same method happens. You don't trust it right from the very beginning. You're going to watch it work side by side, and eventually you figure out what it can do, what it can't do, and you trust it. So leadership is essentially the same. The things that make you effective as a leader and as a manager are still the skills that are extremely valued. Now you're just applying it to not just people, but to also technology.
Yeah, very interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that actually transpires and how that goes. And the pace that it will go for different companies will vary too.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting, and we haven't explored as much, we talk about all the things AI will do, but then also how does it elevate what the human does? And again, I talked about this before in the previous segment, how are you using AI to allow us time to invest in the things that are uniquely human? And so we know that when AI can't do it, it's usually these human to human, face-to-face interactions to build trust. How are we developing and doubling down on those skills in our people? Are we investing in that and being strategic of saying, we're going to elevate this and do this better than anyone else? Are we training our people to do this? Are we finding the right people to do these things that only humans can do? And how important is that in our organization to creating our competitive advantage? And I think that's a really interesting point, that AI allows us to take all the things that technology can do, but then also what's uniquely human? What's unique to how humans drive our winning strategies as an organization? And I think that's going to be an interesting conversation for boardrooms too as well.
Charlene, that's the perfect segue to go into our final segment.
We call this the Centennial Echo. In 1927, the introduction of sound killed the silent film era almost overnight. We're in that same moment now, the silent film era of business, where routine competence is about to be erased. Technology moves fast, but the thing that lasts is the X factor moat. It's the moral soul, the judgment, and the human connection that no algorithm can replicate. That's the legacy that holds.
So Charlene, talk about, in your framework, what actually is the X factor that AI cannot replicate?
Well, the thing is when you talk about empathy, AI can feel very empathetic. There's a famous study that showed that an AI was responding to medical responses more empathetically than doctors were. And that's because it just gave longer responses. It took more time. It started the conversation with like, I'm so sorry this is happening to you. Whereas the human doctors just kind of got into it. And so it can be more empathetic, but it doesn't have empathy because it's never gone through the pain. It's never stood in your shoes and had that fear and that anxiety, the worry that comes. And so again, there's a sense that AI can do a lot of these things, but in the end, it's not human. So how do we use AI to expand our empathy? I believe that artificial empathy can actually help us be more human, because at some point we get empathy fatigue. We're just exhausted. We can't see past our biases to look at people. And so when AI can take a lot of that heavy lifting, and that allows us to be reserving our energy to use that empathy for the moments that really matter, to understand and to hear with AI and understand somebody's biases. I remember talking to somebody and they just reminded me of a crazy uncle that I had. And no matter how much I tried to put my uncle out of mind, this person just reminded me so much of that uncle. If I had empathy goggles with AI in them, I could potentially block that out and hear this person in a different way. I think AI can be this amazing translator across organizations. One of the biggest problems we have in decision making is that we're all looking at things from our own unique siloed perspective. Here's HR's perspective, here's IT's perspective, finance and the business lines are looking at it, and we're interpreting the data through our own lens. And AI can be the translator, not of languages, but of points of view to help us come to a common understanding. So the things that we bring that are uniquely human to us, that is inherently flawed with bias, can become and accentuated and help us extend and understand, but also put out a point of view that other people can understand. So again, I think it's this integration of these two intelligences of AI and human, rather than thinking about them fighting each other, replacing each other. How do we use them together to reach a different level of intelligence and ability to get work done?
In the video, we referenced how you compare this moment to 1927 when sound transformed film overnight. What's a modern silent film skill that you think leaders need to drop right now?
I think a skill I think leaders need to develop is curiosity and imagination, because we cannot even begin to imagine what this world will look like. In the same way, we couldn't imagine what the world would look like with the internet and the World Wide Web, that we would be buying shoes of all things online. Something that you always thought you had to go into the store and try on. Now we can just buy easily online clothes, everything like that. But there are some things, again, that are preserved for in real life. You can't get a haircut online. You probably will have robots at some point who can give you a haircut. Maybe you trust it or not. So there are advances that I think we can't even begin to imagine. So I think for leaders in particular, giving up the need to have all the answers, I talked about this before, is the most fundamental thing. We have to shift our belief in being a leader as having all the answers. That's why you got promoted, is because you knew how to do the job better than anyone else. And you had expertise that you could say, I know there's a lot of decisions here, and here's the decision, here's the answer. We may not be able to do that. And instead, how do we ask really good questions that collectively, us with our AI, can begin to tackle? Because the great questions steer us in a certain direction of where we need to be headed. So setting the agenda, saying this is the future we want to build, laying out the strategy, and then making it so that everybody understands what their role is in making that strategy success is what leadership is all about. It has always been what leadership is about, but now we have to double down on that.
And if someone follows your 90-day blueprint today, what do you hope their legacy looks like 10 years from now?
I would say their legacy, just even 90 days from now, is that they have a plan that they can communicate to everyone. And 10 years from now, you're executing on that plan that got you going in that very beginning. And again, I believe in creating that competitive advantage and winning. So 10 years from now, you should be exponentially ahead of anybody else in your field. And either you are expanding into other fields that are adjacent or even completely leapfrogging into other areas as well. I saw this in one company that fully embraced AI, a call center company called Connecta, in early 2023, right after AI launched. And they are so far ahead of their competitors in terms of having an AI fluent workforce, in terms of the capabilities that they have internally to deliver for their customers, and reinventing their business, getting into new lines of business because of that new capability. They recently announced that they were going to grow their headcount by 5% over the next 2 years. That's not the story that you're hearing from most people in business, let alone in call centers. They're all saying we're cutting our workforces by tons of people. And there's organizations saying, oh no, we're growing exponentially. And also we need more people who are AI capable and fluent to be able to drive that growth. That's a very different story. And I think that's the kind of curiosity and imagination that organizations need now from their leaders.
So that's a powerful, differentiated story. That's a yes and, right? You're using AI and humans to create a team of super workers. And if you're really, truly growing, you need more people.
Right. And again, you may not need the same amount of people in order to grow. But if you're expanding into new businesses, and I really liked what Elaine was talking about, as a solopreneur, you can do so many more things now. And again, I'm a solopreneur and I have so many agents working for me. Instead of starting yet another organization and becoming an entrepreneur again with headcount and overhead, I'm thinking, how far can I push this to have 0 employees? In the same way that you're thinking about this, when you're looking at your organization filled with people, you already have those amazing people who know your business, know your customers. How can you create even more leverage with them versus thinking, how do I get rid of them? And that's a very different mindset to come into and thinking about AI. If you're looking only at efficiency, you can't cut your way to growth and to competitive advantage. You can only get so far. to truly win, you're thinking about how do I leverage the assets, and importantly, this most important asset of your people in the best way possible.
Well, thank you, Charlene. Thank you for spending 90 plus minutes with us today. We covered a lot of territory, things like pilots that don't scale, entry-level jobs disappearing, the sense that AI might be moving faster than our ability to adapt. I've really enjoyed learning more about your book, Winning with AI, the 90-Day Blueprint for Success, because we addressed leadership, identity, and legacy. I urge everybody to check out Charlene's book. Again, that's Winning with AI, the 90-Day Blueprint for Success. And I would say that the hardest part of change isn't learning something new, it's letting go of what made you successful before. In other words, what got you here won't get you there. I think that's the title of Marshall Goldsmith's leadership book. And that idea came up many times today, because the real shift with AI isn't just technological, it's psychological, and it's also deeply personal. So one thing to take with you from this conversation, this week, identify one part of your work where you are still doing instead of orchestrating, and ask yourself, what would it look like to delegate it entirely to a system, a process, or an AI agent? Just start there. That's how the transition actually begins. It's a lot of experimentation, and through that experimentation, you will undoubtedly fall on your face or experience failure, but that's how you're going to be learning each time that you get up and try something else. So thank you for spending the time with us on this Inspired Money episode. A special thank you to the Inspired Money team, Bradley John Eaglefeather and Chad Lawrence, for helping to bring this episode together and making these conversations possible. I learned that Bradley John Eaglefeather can step in as co-host when my power goes out, so I can rest assured that the show must go on. So thank you, Bradley, for doing that. And everyone can find out more about Charlene at charleneli.com. That's li.com. Charlene, anything else that you want to plug besides a new book?
I think one of the things I love doing is working with leaders. And I am doing coaching and advisory for leaders who want to go through this change, especially people in the C-suite. So, and I really encourage you to stay in touch with me, no matter what your role is, because that's how I do my research and learn. So please reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. My email is charlene@charleneli.com. Yes, I give my email away because I want people to connect and I want to hear from you. So please write, stay in touch, comment. I would love to hear what is working, what's not, and because that just informs my research. Please stay in touch.
Thank you, Charlene. Thank you for bringing clarity to this very dynamic area and for your bravery of sharing your email. I hope that you have strong AI-powered tools to help you manage your inbox. So thank you, everybody. I'm Advisor Andy. Until next time, do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens. Thanks, everyone.